Evening, coaches. Welcome to Daily Sport Locker Room Podcast. Ryan and Daniel back again this week, lads. A really enjoyable 2 games of football. I actually went to Croke Park yesterday for the Leinster final. I think most people were sort of expecting probably, Dublin to come into the Leinster final, roll Louth over. There was a lot of talk. Will they keep it within 15? Will they keep it within 10? A wee bit disrespectful probably, for Louth. But I suppose on the back of what Dublin have been doing in Leinster over the last number of years, it probably was no surprise that this was people's mentality getting into the game. But certainly, Ryan, maybe even start with yourself. Like, I certainly felt that Louth came in to the game very specific plan. I know I shared a video with you yesterday, Sam, right? Obviously very reliant on Sam maximising his scoring opportunities. Any goal opportunities they got, they would have obviously take them as well to give themselves a chance. And, when you go back through the game, Ryan, like obviously it was a kick out. The Niall McDonald, who's in nets for Louth, St. Feckin's man, obviously had a really good game. Like, he just tried a little cheeky one into the pocket, dispossessed, and then Dublin are no better team in the country at hunting goals off an opposition's kick out. But right up until then, Ryan, they were well in the game and, finish a 4-point defeat. But I thought Louth take an awful lot of credit and heart getting into the All-Ireland series. They set up, Ryan, very defensively. They didn't contest a single kick out all day. They obviously were conserving their energy, sitting in with a deep block. They were very structured in what they were doing, and they're a very clear, specific plan. And I suppose it does go to show that if you have that plan, you have a physicality that Louth have and conditioning levels and probably the mental memory of having the heart and Devlin there for a number of years as well, adding into what the management team brought. A real credible performance, Ryan. Real credible.
Yeah, massive performance from Louth, Stephen. The couple of things that you mentioned there, a clear game plan. I thought Louth's conditioning was very impressive. I felt that they were able to match Dublin in a lot of positions. I felt their big players, the likes of Grimes, put in a massive shift. Obviously, Morroy kicked a couple of wonder scores. Keenan got a goal. So I think the big thing that we wanted Louth to do coming into this game was really go after it. And I know you're saying they dropped off every kick out, but, once they got the ball, they weren't afraid to drive in numbers and take their men on and try and create overlaps. And I know they got a goal near the end of the game, but they scored 2-12 against Dublin, which is massive scoring. And in a lot of championship games, that would win you. Majority of matches. Unfortunately, they were just up against the Dublin team who seemed to always hit 20+ points. Dublin actually ended up with 119, probably not playing that well. But I would give massive praise to Louth, and I really think they'll come away from that game delighted with. I know they lost, but delighted with the performance. And I'll tell you what, they'll bring a lot into the All-Ireland series from that.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And Daniel, they're in a group, with Monaghan, Meath, and Kerry. Kerry's not motored overly well, then Kerry will not like playing that sort of system. They've a strong possibility of beating Meath and a real strong possibility of beating Monaghan. Louth could qualify out of this group in second place, Ledge.
Yeah, and in fairness to them, they as Ryan said, we looked for them to do something. We looked for them to do something and really commit to something, whatever it was. I thought it was just refreshing in a way. I was in there as well. I was in the premium and I wasn't looking enough to be in a box. Although there was drops of Carlsberg coming down off my head. When I looked up, I thought I heard a northern accent. I should have known it was you, but
I don't drink Carlsberg.
But do you know what? They totally committed something, and you could very clearly see that everyone, the way they dropped off kickouts even before freeze. You're kind of accepting that there's going to be a little bit of probably a backlash from supporters, a backlash from maybe general public watching the game. But they didn't care. They were unapologetic about it. And you know what? We talked about efficiency of work. It saved them so much effort. They said to themselves, we could chase here and we can chase Cluxton, and you could chase Cluxton all day and not get near one of his kickouts. I think the justification in it for me for them doing what they did, obviously for being in the game, firstly, but secondly, I think it was 63rd minute was the first actual contested kickout they went out that Louth pushed up on. Cluxton hit long to Fenton. Fenton caught one pass to Costello, one pass to Con, and it was a score from a mark. And it completely justifies why they were doing it, because they clearly felt, right, we can't compete with this. And, you're talking about, in rugby, they use the ball and play time. You have to look at it. Louth are saying to themselves, if Dublin take 3 minutes per phase here, and I don't want to get too overly technical, and maybe this wasn't the plan at all, because sometimes you're as a player, you be listening to stuff and you're saying, geez, that's not what was meant. That's not what was meant to happen at all. Where are these analysts going? But it looked like they were saying, if Dublin take 3 minutes per phase, there's only 70 minutes in the game. There's only so much scoring you can do in that time. That gives us a better chance of being in the game at the end of it. And Look,
Ledger, I
did.
remember, I know we have a lot of coaches listening. I remember obviously planning in 2017 for Dublin. That for me, that was them. They were in their plum back then. Like they were really, the bench was just sensational. The marquee names they had, the quality they had. That was the middle of the six in a row team, and they were fucking superb. But I remember planning for that, and I remember thinking to myself, right, it's very straightforward. The halftime statistics, were very evident for me that day when we played Dublin. There was only 3 points in the game, we had 5, and I think there was an astonishment from people. Fuck, they're still in the game. But we had 58% possession. A Division 4 team had 58% possession against Dublin in that first half. And one of the reasons, Ryan, obviously, for this was very simple. It was two things, right? One, it was going to give us confidence being on the ball. And secondly, if we have the ball, they can't hurt us, And it was more or less try and take the sting out of the game, play the game in your terms, manage the game. And it was competitive, Ledge, and even right up until the 50th minute when Brendan gets sent off, it's only 9-6. But it used to amaze me, Ryan, right? And this is something I want to ask the two of you here. I'll stay with you, Ledge, for a second. It used to amaze me though that better teams than Division 4 teams like Carlow, better teams wouldn't show this level of disregard, Ledge. There was nearly a pride thing. We can't keep the ball. We can't drop off kickouts. We have to fucking go after Dublin because everyone says you have to go after them. You can't beat them unless you press them. And it's nearly bullshit. If you'd have seen the likes of Tyrone or Monaghan or Roscommon or fucking Mayo go in and take that approach, they possibly could have beat that Dublin team. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And I think, I think you're right. To go after a team doesn't necessarily mean be feckless in defence, or it doesn't mean be reckless in how you're used to the ball. Going after them means going with a very specific plan, executing it, and playing with direction. I mean, I think that's going after it as far as I'm concerned. And ultimately, nobody can blame Louth. We're talking about kind of severe sort of tactics here just to stay in a game, and I don't think anyone's under any illusions that that's what they were doing. But of course, that's the structure that they're in, and they have to. I think Louth come out of this with an awful lot of credit, because the other thing I will say is, while they kept the ball, and they kept the ball very well at times, Dublin are very good at setting traps, and they put little channels, and all of a sudden I was sitting on the 45 in the first half, down in the Cusick stand, and you could see it coming, you could see turnovers coming, but what I thought Louth did quite well actually was they picked a one-on-one and went at a soft shoulder, and they probably broke that first line 5-6 times in the first half, and they nearly got a free off at every occasion, and probably exposed Dublin a little bit in that sense, because I thought Dublin were a small bit in the first half, especially a small bit passive in kind of how they sat back a little bit. So I thought Louth got the balance really, really well, and they were unbelievably efficient. To give them their dues, they kicked some fantastic scores. Mulroy was brilliant in the frees. As you said, going forward for them, it's probably having that balance a little bit, because I think Mulroy was absolutely bollocks from trying to get back to the 45 every time. If they could afford to leave one up high, maybe a link player, and defend with something similar like they did, that'll stand them in really good stead. But you made an interesting point about the pride. For me, let's say Kildare, I know we won't go on about Kildare, but even me, of teams of the past, would have had probably better, more physically capable players have gone up against Dublin, but never just said fuck it completely and let's swallow the ego.
We are going to turn this into a shit show. And you know what, Ryan? I actually texted in our WhatsApp group yesterday, the PE group in school, and I says, look, now they're set up well. I says they're not contesting. I says, I actually wrote the words. I'm looking at it here. I says, I love the absolute disregard they're showing here for what anyone cares about, what anyone thinks, and you have to have that mentality. And James, I can't wait to see him speak to him during the week, because the wee fucker used to always slag me about, when you were at Carlow, you used to keep the ball in play stats to about 12 minutes a half, and I said, yeah, good man. So I'm going to turn into him this week about because he had a role to play in this as well as a slag of a Louth. But on a serious note though, Ryan, there was this very specific game plan, and I'm going back to small details here. And it's good to maybe give coach an insight. In 2017, Ledge, I don't know if you remember this, I actually took Robbie Malloy and Craig Kearney, because there was very little between the two goalkeepers. And Ryan, you're going to laugh your head off. Before every training session for 3 weeks, I had them working on getting their time up from about 25 seconds on a kick out till about 52 seconds. And we managed to make every kick out about 52, 53 seconds, walk around the back of the net, lift our cone, go back around again, lift the ball, feel the ball, change it, see what you can get away with. And you know what? It was a level, a wee bit of frustration. It kept the game attritional. But you have to go into those finer days. When you're playing a team as dominant and as superbly coached as Daniel talked about. Daniel, I was having this conversation today actually in school. Ryan Johnson plays for that. Ryan was in actually subbing in the school today, and I was chatting to him, and I said to him, Dublin for me are the one team who actually look man to man, but then quickly they're doubling up on a man straight. And you're thinking, how are they able to double up be man to man, and then the ball's shifted across, they're man to man again, but there's a double up, and they're so good, as Daniel says, Ryan, at setting those traps. Like, enormous amount of planning goes into trying to set up a team against Dublin. Like, huge amount of planning, you know?
Yeah, well, just even the first thing from an underdog, sorry, point of view, you got to be, I suppose, so focused on your own game plan that you actually don't give a fuck what the media is saying, what maybe the opposition are giving you verbals saying, you know, he's going to come at us, whatever they're trying to, tempt you into. And I think it was evident that the whole Louth team were convinced that this was the best way. And once you have the full team buying in completely to a game plan, then you're already starting off on the right note. Now, what I would say about Louth is the kick out that went wrong obviously led to the goal. But I actually wouldn't put any, like, people be saying, why doesn't he just bloody kick it long? That was the one goal that probably turned the game, and Louth were no longer within a chance of winning it. But you still have to be brave. As you're saying there, Louth wanted to own as much ball as possible, because obviously reduces the amount of damage Dublin can do. So I can see why that goalkeeper was tempted to hit that short. Fenton was probably becoming a bit more dominant in the middle, drive it out long, and all of a sudden Dublin are coming at them again. So Louth did play brave. Now, it did end up going wrong for them, but they did play very brave. And the other thing I would say is keeping possession, but also being a threat in possession. There's two different things. Teams keep possession and they're moving it sideways and backwards and back to the goalie and back to the full back line. And all they're really doing is just inviting the opposition onto them. But I felt Louth, a lot of time, we talk about Dublin going man to man. The Louth players were saying, I'm going to go at my man here. And then whenever Dublin did realise that they need to try and press really aggressively, and as you said, 2s and 3s, Louth were actually very good at times at getting out of that. And once they got out, then all of a sudden, then there was pockets of space opening up, and the likes of Grimes and these boys then were able to, drive into the space, get their shots off. So I thought the Louth game plan was perfection, and it was obviously Ger Brennan. He knows the Dublin setup inside out. He knows maybe what Dublin's trying to bring to the table. And I thought Louth definitely deserve a lot of credit in that they didn't really give a fuck about what anyone else thought of them.
Yeah, and that's important, Ledge, though, even as a narrative within a group, like, and you've seen it in teams you've been involved in yourself, like, when that outside narrative slips in, and the players start to think, maybe the media's right, maybe we need to be more offensive, and it's funny, like, and I give you a story here of, like, even locally, like, a club team who were deemed defensive, and then the following year they bring a manager in and he's told by the committee, we have to play more forward-thinking football, and all you hear in matches is kick it forward, move forward, drive forward, and he's putting this narrative out there. It's like what do you call Dooher and Logan when they first came into Tyrone. Mickey Hart was chastised for this, through the hands game, and it was all about kicking. And they discovered very quickly that kicking didn't work, so they went back to what Tyrone were good at, and won in All Ireland probably running the ball through the fucking hands, So it is very important that you control the narrative, Ledge. When you're a part of a team, you have to have complete faith and trust. And I don't know if you remember the first meeting we had in the Talbot Hotel, where I handed out the game plan maps, and I says, this is how we're fucking playing. And every one of you had the map in front of you. The way I looked at it, Ryan, was very straightforward. If you want to go a direction, if you want to go to a destination or a journey, you need a map to guide you. And my whole thinking behind it was give the boys paint the boys a picture, very simplistic, draw out a map and say, right, this is the way we're playing, this is how we're setting up, we make no apologies. And for 2 years, Ledge, you would have had a really strong buy-in from that, like, and then you just maybe one or two boys get a wee bit ahead of themselves. And how difficult is that to really control that narrative? Like, how difficult is it? Like,
yeah, it is. I remember the map. All right, we had loads of visual learners, right? So we needed lots of drawings and diagrams and stuff like that.
We stick men and stuff like that.
No, I remember it well. I do. And the important thing is there's two sides to it. Like, firstly, your players have to understand why you're doing something, and it's not about doing it to appease someone, or it's not about doing it because it's the sexy thing to do at the moment. It's to do it because it suits your team. So, like, if Louth at the weekend felt that their best way of beating Dublin was to go full high court press, fair enough. That's their thing to do, and that's absolutely fine. It's not necessarily like that. A defensive, you just have to be defensive and ignore what everyone's saying, and you have to drop off every kick-up. That suited Louth at the weekend, but maybe that mightn't suit them against a Meath team in a couple of weeks. There has to be a bit of flexibility, but your players have to understand that you're doing this because it's, firstly, what you think will win you the game, and secondly, it has absolutely nothing to do with the outside noise. But it is very hard to, as a player, and especially, let's say, from a smaller county like we were, when you get a tiny bit of notoriety and people are wondering, as you say, why aren't you playing a bit more? And it's like, lads, come down to Dr. Cullen 3 or 4 years ago, and it will tell you exactly why we aren't playing a bit more, because we've been in Division 4 for the last 15 years or whatever it was. So it is very hard, and players sometimes, and especially players who might be in those roles that traditionally they might have felt that they might have been a playmaker or a scorer or whatever it might be, and they might be finding themselves having to defend a lot more or pick up a slow centre backs man or something like that, and all of a sudden then they're thinking, well, what about my game, but you probably have to have a bigger sacrifice in the group and understand that, right, we can all play our own individual games and be in the exact same place that we were. And Louth would have said, okay, we can do what we did last year and lose by 21 points. Or we can, and I'll use Sam Mulroy again, we could sacrifice our game. He probably sacrificed a lot of his game yesterday just to get back down the field. And let's try and be competitive and let's try and put up the best show we possibly can. So it's very hard. I think players sometimes, and especially if you have some dissenting voices within the group that mightn't 100% buy into what you're doing, it eats away at it very quickly. Because let's say if 1-2 Louth players that are on field yesterday decided, I'm not sure about this, it would have fell to pieces. And I think that's the most impressive thing for me was
100%.
Totally buy it.
Every one of them bought it. And Ryan, I suppose that's one thing I used to say to the boys there too. Like, and I would still say to teams, like, we have a plan, right, and we have a direction. And what we need is if everyone believes in that plan. So if we've got 100% buy-in from the group, right? Now, my plan mightn't be as good as Daniel St. Ledger's plan or Ryan Jones's plan, but if we have 100% buy-in, right? And Ryan Jones's sexier plan has a 75% buy-in and Ledger's plan has an 80% buy-in, we're going to win because we have 100% belief in what we're doing and the direction we're going. And the second thing, Ryan, I used to talk to and still do about players, even in school, role clarity, role acceptance. Make the role very clear. Here is your role. You must now accept it. Like, so Ryan, your job on Sunday is we're playing Donegal. You're going to be marking fucking whoever it happens to be, Kieran Thompson. You're going to be doing X, Y, and Z. Daniel, your job is bump, 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 bump. And you've got to accept that role. But I have made your role very clear in what you're doing, And I suppose, Ryan, when you're coaching a team, it's very, very important that there's clarity in what you're doing and players have massive belief in what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, that was Jim McGuinness's biggest strength this year with Donegal.
Yeah.
Clarity in what they were doing with their game plan, and the players had total belief. And funny, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I was reading Rory Kavanagh's book. Might have said it in the last podcast, I'm not too sure. But back in 2012, it was the same thing. He wanted the players to judge their, intensity, their defensive, their attacking play, their counter-attacking, whether it was hard running, support play. And the last thing he wanted them to mark themselves out of 5 was their belief in sticking to the game plan.
Interesting.
That's the exact same. Like, Paddy McBurdy isn't starting from Donegal for a reason. It's probably because he can't carry out the game plan that McGuinness wants. And what I would say, Stephen, is we're not all blessed with the footballers that Kerry have or the footballers that Dublin have. Like, if you've got better footballers, you can probably say, just go out, lads, and express yourselves. And more often than not, you'll win the game. But when you're playing as an underdog, you got to bring to the table something different, because a 15-on-15 or you go out and seeing how it goes isn't going to cut it. So clarity in the game plan and then the players' total belief in it will go a long way.
So I think there's a wee thing in GA, Daniel, right? I think there's this fucking concept in GA where it's very straightforward, right? We're very much a copycat association, that everyone copies what's in vogue and what's happening, right? But there also as well is there's an awful level of traditional thinking in the GA, and we probably have that historical sort of, rule book, etc. And it's very slow to change and things like that, right? So people say it's better in that day. Was it better in them days? It was better here. Was it fuck better? At the end of the day, players are better physical condition. They're more skillful. They can kick off both feet. They can catch. They can ride hits. They can, there's so much more to the game, even the evolution of the goalkeeper, right? So I'll take soccer. I remember way back, I think it's maybe 2013, 2014, Ryan, you might know this. Brendan Rodgers was Liverpool manager and he had Suarez, Sterling and Sturridge as the front three. And they were very close to winning the league. Remember the year Gerrard slipped or whatever, they were playing Chelsea, right? And Mourinho was over Chelsea. But one of the traits of that Liverpool team was the fast start. So all those blue teams away in the first 25 minutes went 2 goals up and then they'd sit in playing the counter-attack and Suarez and these boys with the pace would run right. So Mourinho came downfield, Daniel, and he brought a Chelsea team who were limited enough, but he had a very specific plan. First 20 minutes, throw-ins were going to take 15, 20 seconds. There was going to be an injury. There was going to be a head injury. There was going to be stoppages, goalkeeper chasing the ball, kick-outs being slowed down, right? Booed off the fucking pitch at half-time, 1-0 up, won the game 2-0. That was deemed a tactical masterclass. You do that in GAA and it's like fucking so attritional, load of bullshit. That's not hard to watch. But that's what people want. You want to win the game. Like, So Limerick go to Newry on Saturday to play down. They're going down the road. What do? Just go out toe to toe, get beat by 15, 16 points in the Tailteann Cup. What odds? At least go with some sort of fucking plan to say, you know what, we're going to turn this into an absolute war of attrition, into a battle. Surely, lads, there has to be more respect given for fucking teams that actually have a plan and go say, you know what, we're going to go and try and win this game the best resources we have here.
Yeah, it is a thing, and look, it's probably no secret that a lot of Ulster teams probably are more in tune with it than a lot of Southern teams. I don't know what the reason is. Is it a cultural thing? I'm really not sure. And even as you said, lads who will be giving out about defensive football will watch, as you say, Liverpool United on a Sunday and will be stuck to it for the full 90 minutes, and maybe again it's the GA's desire to not be in any way associated with soccer. You see them with the penalties. We'll do a penalty shootout, but you have to have the same 5 penalty takers taking them over and over again, just so we're not the same as soccer. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. And as I said, that's not that I'd be saying you have to turn every game into an attritional shit show either. It's just doing whatever you can to be competitive. And for a lot of the time, and this comes back to our structural debate, we happen to have these mismatches where the only option for a lot of these teams is turning it into that kind of a situation. So I don't see why players or why supporters should be in any way kind of anxious about making themselves competitive, because ultimately it's the structures that are giving us these opportunities where teams have to do that. For example, if Leitrim or Carlow and Laois played at the weekend, neither team set up overly defensively because they're kind of at the same level. You had a 2-17 apiece. But then you balance that then with what you saw in Croke Park, which was a wildly tactical, attritional game set up by Louth because of the structure that we have. So, look, I personally, I just don't understand why there's not more of a buy-in from a lot of teams to just go on and doing whatever you have to do to make yourself competitive. I don't know what. I think it's a cultural thing. I really do.
I would say, lads, it happens. It happens in every sport, where the underdog will try and come with something different. So what I'm saying here is, in darts, you'll often see players that they'll take longer to throw. In boxing, Tyson Fury, do you think he's going to come against Usyk at the weekend and make it free flowing? Is he fuck? He's going to hang on to him. He's going to
if his outlet does right.
He's going to try and make it a slogfest. He's going to slow him down. So in tennis, you would see guys taking longer for their serve. They just try and frustrate the opposition as much as they can, especially when they're an underdog. I don't know why in Gaelic football, when an underdog comes with a game plan that is probably maybe hard to watch, but they have total belief that this is their best way of winning, why everyone has to be, so negative towards it. They have to come with something. So, my point is, it happens in all different sports. So I don't see why Gaelic football should be, from a supporter's point of view, so harsh on them.
Well, I went up yesterday as a neutral, and I was intrigued by the fact that Louth, managed to make that a real game, as long as they did. And that's not me being condescending, because Louth have some brilliant footballers, some really good players, a lot of physicality in their team, a lot of size as well. I think some of their forwards, like Kieran Keenan, centre half forward, Artie Eman's a really good player. Grimes is a handful at 12. Sam Elroy obviously brings that bit of stardust as well. Kieran Downey, have been so impressed with him this year. Probably moving away from Louth, lads. We'll just touch briefly on Dublin. I know we're probably Dublin out at this stage. We've talked about them that much, but with a wide spread of scorers, you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10 different scorers yesterday. They brought Jack McCaffrey off the bench. They brought Paddy Small off the bench. They brought Brian Howard off the bench, lads. And I don't think it's a coincidence, man. And we'll finish on this before we move to the Ulster final. I don't think it's a coincidence that Kerry didn't look to be fully modern in Munster, Ryan, and Dublin didn't really look to be fully modern in Leinster. It nearly feels as if those two teams are in a bit of a pre-season stage of their training, in regards maybe even the load of their training, the heaviness of what they're doing, probably looking to peak for 4 or 5 weeks' time.
Yeah, they're probably going through a block now, Stephen, as well, where it could be, they're trying to get it in the legs as such, and no disrespect to Louth or Clare.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Both Kerry and Dublin knew that they were going to get through this game. Let's call a spade a spade. And even Brian Howard didn't start yesterday. Brian Howard, I feel he'll definitely start for Dublin when it comes to this.
Chatting about him today, Ryan. I think he's a class footballer. Brilliant. Yeah, really underrated too, lads. Really underrated.
Yeah, and
he's Fenton's club, isn't he, Raheny?
Yeah,
Raheny. Yeah, sure. Raheny are Division 2 at your old friend is in Inverleigh. But they're Division 2 in the league at the moment, and then they'll have Howard come back, they'll have Sean McMahon to come back, they'll have Fenton to come back, Robbie Henley comes back from Mayo, and they'll be an absolute animal of a
Daniel, tell me this: did Darren Lunny sign for Raheny? Did he?
Yeah, he's been up there. This is his second year. Yeah, he's playing really well.
Darren would have played a wee bit, Ryan, for Carlow, a talented lad, a forward. Like, but again, an inter-county standard forward, so big plus to them.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's what I'm saying. Howard's a phenomenal player, and he only came on yesterday for Dublin. When I'm looking at the Dublin forward line, Mannion only got a point, Baskel only got a point, Kilkenny only got a point. What I'm saying is maybe them forwards weren't as sharp as what they would be if they were, coming into an All-Ireland quarter-final and semi-final. So potentially they've been going through a heavy load, as I mentioned there. And, you could see it maybe in some of their performances. Con scored 1-4. The big plus for them was Fenton was able to, get up through the levels, and he ended up scoring 3 points from midfield and was very dominant.
Yeah.
I was curious. I saw Mannion today, and I think he was on a podcast, Off the Ball or something like that, and he was talking about, how the game is kind of hard to play and tough to watch and looking for 3 points for scores inside the 45. Just wonder, were they a little bit rattled the way Louth set up yesterday? Were they a little bit pissed off? Because there was a couple of occasions even I saw, like the Fenton put in a kind of a 60-yard pass, a crossfield pass that was never on it over the end line. There was a couple, Scully tried to force a couple of balls. I wonder were they, there was a certain level of boredom. Like I was watching Cluxton take kickouts and stand on the D, and he obviously never had to compete for one. I wonder did Louth almost give them a little bit of a niggle, because they were extremely well set up, like they really were. But I suppose the count, I'm disagreeing with myself here. To still score 119 with 15 men in an opposition 45 over 70 minutes is still phenomenal.
Well, I think that's the game. I think the game has. I said this to a friend there yesterday. Actually, you're dropping off kickouts. If you're going to drop off every single kickout, we had this discussion about down in Armagh. I do feel there's a time. I thought there was a few opportunities when they had free kicks with Samuel Roy that maybe possibly they should have maybe went after them a wee bit, because Louth do have a bit of physicality and size around their middle, and maybe just trust that size that they have, trust that physicality, trust that strength. Because when you hand an opposition nowadays, lads, what are you talking about? What did Louth score? 2-12? So that's 14 kickouts, another 7 or 8 wides. You're handing a team probably 25 free possessions in a game, right? And the way your Derrys are coached now, Ryan, and your Tyrones and your Donegals and your Armagh, like all these teams are coached in clutch moments now and structured attacks and slow plays. Like, so they're going to get a shot away. You know what I mean? They're going to get a shot away. Like, so it is probably a damn do you do, damn do you don't. Like, but you have to probably give them respect for how they set up. Like, but we'll talk about obviously the All Ireland series, lads, next week. But looking at the Ulster final, poor McGuinness, I actually did feel sorry for him actually, because I think, lads, it's a phenomenal statistic to have lost 5 penalty shootouts, 1 in the McKenna Cup, 2 in an All Ireland quarter final, and 2 in an Ulster final. And you're sort of thinking to yourself, is the fucking man jinxed or something, as a manager? Because, and you know what, Ryan, I'll be honest with you as well, as good as McGuinness is, he gets a lot of luck. And, you obviously need to be a good manager, but you also need a bit of lucky manager as well, and get a bit of luck and timing and things like that as well. They got the breaks against Derry. They got the break against Tyrone in the last minute with Morgan dropping the ball. All of a sudden, Donegal are beat. There's no talk of them, and there's no talk of the Jim thing. And then even yesterday, like, they looked dead and buried at 14-10. They looked dead and buried at 15-11, to come back. Shows a serious degree of character as well from them, and think, but I actually felt Armagh will be absolutely kicking themselves, Ryan. They left that behind yesterday, kicking themselves.
Yeah, definitely, Stephen. They went maybe 13-9, they went 14-10, and then they went 15-11.
Yeah.
In a game that never really, up until that point, it never really, there was maybe 2 points the maximum between the two teams. And then they went 20-18, I think, in extra time. So Armagh will be, they'll be devastated. The only thing that'll ever make up for that is if they go on and win the All Ireland. But what I would say is, yes, McGuinness, of course, he's had his bit of luck, but I do think, Stephen, you make your own luck, and it's no coincidence to me that this Donegal team haven't been beaten all year. I know they lost the Tailteann Cup final to Derry. That
mentality.
And it was nearly like they've done the hard yards. And I know sometimes there's too much made of the amount of training and what they're doing and all that. But it was like between McGuinness and the way he has them players, eating out of his hand, and also the belief that they had from the hard yards, I have no doubt that he was saying to them, once he got them in at extra time, they still couldn't put us away. There were 3 times they were 4 up, and they still couldn't put us away. We're fucking going to finish the job now. And on the flip side of that, I think some of them Armagh players, they were nearly afraid. They were going, Jesus Christ, we can't lose another big game.
Yeah.
And Donegal nearly played with no fear. They just went for it. It was like, we have to go for it. And I felt Armagh kind of were like trying to hold on to what they had. Now, in saying that, it's such fine margins at the top level. And McGuinness has done a phenomenal job, as we have said. And your heart definitely would go out to him. But for me, 5-6 weeks ago, whenever the league finals were played, Rian O'Neill only came on that game for 20 minutes. Now, I don't know whether Rian O'Neill was maybe carrying injuries or what throughout the year, but the fact that he only came on for 20 minutes tells me that he obviously hadn't been training consistently, and that was all that they could put him on for. And what I would say, Stephen, is if Armagh want to win a big title, they haven't won an Ulster title in, what is it now? 2008 was it the last one?
Yeah, I think it's 15 years, 15, 16 years.
16 years, whatever it is. They need Rian O'Neill. He's our key player. They need him producing an 8 out of 10. Rian O'Neill, he wasn't bad yesterday, but he was probably at a 6.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is Rian O'Neill probably hadn't the level of training, under his belt that you would like. And that probably proved it, the fact that he didn't start that league final. He only came on for 20 minutes. And then Rian O'Neill had to go off at a crucial time and extra time with cramp. So I suppose the likes of Rian O'Neill will need to look at himself and say, well, if I need to lead Armagh, I'm the man now. I be the Michael Murphy of Donegal.
Yeah.
I need to be the man that leads Armagh to an Ulster title. And Rian gone off at a crucial time, I definitely felt was a key turning point in the game. If Rian O'Neill was firing and had been firing throughout the league and had a really good load under his belt, he wouldn't have been gone off that game, and Armagh would have been Ulster champions for me.
And Ledge, like you're talking about a kick of a ball, like from McGuinness doing back-to-back Ulster titles, like a kick of the ball, in both games, and you sort of think to yourself, like, there is an element of like, such fine margins. Like football is so fickle, like, and history can be decided by small moments. But Ledge, away from that, like this was when the draw was made for Ulster, and Armagh had Cavan, and then Armagh had Fermanagh, and then they had the winners of Down and Antrim. They 100% would have been thinking, we're in an Ulster final, right? We're planning for an Ulster final. Who will be playing? They probably didn't expect to play Donegal. They were probably expecting to play Derry. But we were at the Donegal game, Ledge, in the athletic grounds when they played each other. The Division 2 final was very, very similar as well, only a different sort of... Donegal went 4 up and Armagh came back. And just the fact now that they've played Donegal 3 times and haven't beaten them, there's nearly like a wee psychological factor there as well with McGuinness, isn't there? Like over McGuinness, he beat him with Donegal Kildare in 2011, I think it was. Wasn't it?
Yeah, 11.
2012.
Or Kevin Cassidy, remember? It was
Kevin Cassidy, 2011. Cassidy missed out in the All-Ireland. So 2011, and they're just... Sometimes you just have that wee edge, like he's never lost a championship match to Mickey Hart. Like Ryan talked about that mystique, and that sort of... Or like we were chatting about it today a wee bit, and even chatting to Ryan about his rolling down last year, and he was talking about, when he speaks, like he commands the room, there's that aura and that sort of real personality. And plus he's a fucking master's in sports psychology. So, he's every trick under the sun. Truthfully, will he believe they can win in All-Ireland?
I'm sure that's the message they'll be sending out. Like I still think year one, and this is the same program as probably his previous stint. Year one, I think Ulster was the goal. I think anything after this is bonus territory. I still don't think they have the development. I put it this way: I think Armagh have more strings to their bow than what they showed yesterday. I think they had to play. I've been saying this all year. When Armagh have to play that type of attritional game, it doesn't bring out the best in them. As Ryan said, like Rian O'Neill had to be out the middle because he'd have got swallowed up playing full forward, and you don't see the best of him as an attacking threat. He ends up doing an awful lot of donkey work. I'd say as the year goes on, you'll see a better side of Armagh. Donegal, that's what they do. They'll do that for every game they play. They'll do something very similar. And in fairness, like I know we're saying McGuinness probably unlucky and all the rest of it. Yes, but there is a similar type of loss happening to Armagh quite regularly. And I don't want to put the boot on Armagh here because every metric yesterday was practically 50-50. I mean, there was nothing in it. And in the Derry game last year was something not too dissimilar. So I'm in no way putting the boot in, but there is a pattern of Armagh struggling with these games. And like they had, as Ryan alluded to, they had the chances to go and win the game. And like I know I see a lot of people talking about the two marks. Yeah, I'd always back a player to make the right decision in those situations. I can only imagine both players looked up and said, "Nah, this, I'm nowhere near this. Like, and it'll be a pot shot." So I wouldn't even consider those. I would just consider probably a little bit of sloppiness got into their play for the last maybe 10 minutes, in a little bit of extra time as well, where they could have, their game management could have been a little bit slicker. I'm not talking about going balls out to try and get another 4, 5, 6 points ahead, but just a small little bit more ruthless in possession. But back to McGuinness, yeah, like. It's a funny story talking about psychologists. We had kind of an approach this year about getting a psychologist in with our team, and like we used to, with Carlo anyway, we used to have like you'd have a psychologist once, twice, 3 times a year. I don't know about you, Ryan. Would you have had someone permanent in every session? I don't know, but I always think your best sports psychologist is one of your coaches, one of your managers, who is literally there every single night of the week, who's feeling the mood, who knows what players are going through, knows the decisions. McGuinness is your sports psychologist and your manager, and the McBrearty situation is probably the one for me that, like, McBrearty, no doubt, is quite a big ego on that. Not an ego, but a big personality on that team. And the way he's able to still have him on board while whipping his captain in and out of games and not starting them, I think kind of sums up where McGuinness is. He's just able to pull at the right strings. And look, there's no doubt about it. Like, I mean, he has a special presence. Like, and they have gone the hard way about winning Ulster. I mean, you're not going to win a harder Ulster than that. 2 extra times, Derry as well. I mean, Jesus Christ, like it's some feat. It really is. And I keep going back to the power of the manager and the power of good coaching. And we talked earlier about having the process and sticking to the process. Well, when Donegal were, 15-11, Ryan, they were down at one stage or something like that. When they were 15-11 down, they didn't step away from what they were doing. They had full belief that if we stay doing what we're doing, this is the best chance of winning the game. They didn't say to themselves, "Oh, we're 4 points down. We need to come out of our structure now and start doing a middle third press," because they're like, "Well, that just doesn't work for us. We'll stay doing what we're doing. We'll grind the game out." And they eventually just about did. But that is your players having buy-in. That is total belief in. And look, being Jim McGuinness, having an All-Ireland under your back pocket, it's hard not to listen to him, isn't it? Like,
exactly, and there's a lot being made, Ryan, of the Donegalness in their management team. Luke Barrett's their Donegal man, was with the minors for a number of years, great wee coach. Obviously, he has Neil McGee, bleeds the Donegal. McFadden, his own brother-in-law. And it's obviously McGuinness himself, and it's that Donegal connection, isn't it? Like, and that installing that pride back into Donegal again. But Ryan, here's one for you, like, just before you mention that, like, Donegal and Armagh this morning wake up. One team, both teams probably nursing a hangover. One team will be in day 2 and there'll be a bit of crack and the atmosphere will be great. Another team will be sort of post-mortems, sombre. But come training Wednesday night, Donegal are exactly the same position as Armagh. They're both going into Super 16. They're no further on. Armagh are now back exactly where Donegal are. Armagh don't have an extra game. They don't have any playoffs, nothing. They're both back at the same level again. And sort of makes you think as well too, the provincials maybe have just lost a slight edge in, what other than obviously the fucking mistake of or the magic of getting a Celtic Cross, obviously huge, but it's not the be on the end all for Armagh either.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be surprised if Donegal go and lose to Tyrone in the first game. That wouldn't surprise me, and I'm not too sure who are Armagh playing now, lads, in the first game.
I've got it here now. Actually.
Westmeath, Derry Galway.
Tricky one. So, look, the big thing for Armagh is obviously they're going to be devastated going to train on Wednesday night, but they need to try and make sure that game is really more important than the rest of them, because if they lose that game and then they don't follow up with any wins against the so-called stronger teams in that group, they're not getting through. They need to gather themselves quickly for that Westmeath game. But look, Stephen, like, the Ulster is everything for both of those teams. Everything. And it was, you could see that in the Donegal supporters. You could see it in the players, what it meant to them after that game. And like them Armagh lads, they are chasing. Like, they've been on that journey now for 10 years. They've been chasing an Ulster title. And the thing about it is, people might say, "Oh, well, that's 2 Ulster finals in a row Armagh have been to." There's no guarantee they'll get anywhere near an Ulster final next year. They could draw a Derry, who's not going to, the way that Derry got caught this year, they're going to make sure they're at, another level now moving into next year. Like, Armagh might never get back near an Ulster final, even if McGeaney decides to step away or not. So the thing about me was, last year I felt Armagh had the winning of the game against Derry as well. And they kind of nearly just didn't go for it. They kind of tried to hold on to what they had. And I know they're probably thinking 4 points up, but they stepped off some of Donegal's kickouts. And one of the things that we actually mentioned earlier in this podcast was the way teams are now, and they're so coached very well to, get a shot off from their attack. And the way Donegal were so accurate. Once they dropped off, they were giving Donegal possession, and Donegal were very good at engineering a shot from a lot of their own possessions. So I just think, right, lads, if we get into this bloody position again, we're going to fucking go for it.
Go after them.
We're going to squeeze the fucking kick out, and we're not going to give them handy possession. And the thing about it is, when Donegal go long, their biggest threat on the floor is Ryan McHugh. Ryan McHugh was being man-marked by Oisín Conde throughout, so they had done the job on him. I'm just wondering now, will they look back and say, we were crazy to fucking turn down them kickouts, the high squeeze. We had opportunities, and we were inviting Donegal onto us again. Like, to go 15-11 up and not score for the last 15 to 20 minutes, you have to say, did the Armagh boys, they didn't show enough balls, and that sounds harsh, but to me that's what it looks like.
They're doing a lot of work there too as well, Daniel, I think, over the last couple of years, and working on those clutch moments, those big set plays. That a great one against Down, actually, when the game was level, and they nearly pulled it off again. There was two marks that weren't taken. Jordy Oak took one, and he was told to go back. I think did Grugan take one, or somebody who took one on the far side. I can't remember.
Kelly put one wide, and I think Campbell had one.
Kelly's was the last one, the very last one. But there was two marks in the same move they sort of said no, go again, and they were obviously trying to work, on that set piece that they've been working on, because probably they know themselves in those clutch moments, those game managed moments, that they've fallen short, But look, listen, the All Ireland series, they're out again in 2 weeks. They've 2 weeks to regroup. They're at home to Westmeath. Or it could be neutral. I'm not 100% sure, but I know Westmeath, and Westmeath will be a difficult enough game for them. Westmeath's coming off the back of quite a high, having won Division 3, albeit they were chinned in Leinster, but I think that was more to do with the fact of the quick turnaround from the league final the following week. But I suppose moving into the Tailteann Cup, I'm just going to read you out a couple of scorelines here. 14-point victory, 16-point victory, 20-point victory, 14-point victory. Some of the scorelines sort of suggest as well that maybe we don't have 2 tiers in football, and maybe we have 3 or 4, and we probably do because our leagues probably show that. But is the Tailteann now maybe just wearing a little bit thin of enthusiasm for a lot of counties? Because, like, lads, for a county to be beaten by 14, 16, 20 and 14 points, like in a Tailteann, where you're actually meant to say, like Jarlath Burns coming out and saying it's the most open Tailteann we've ever had, like, mother of God, like, let's be honest, like, those defeats are actually going to Kildare go to Waterford this week. I feel we could be looking at 30 points plus in that game, and that's no disrespect to Waterford. If Kildare bring, any sort of game at all, Kildare beat Longford in an impressive 325 win at the weekend. London obviously was the game of the weekend. We're going to chat about that. Sligo hit 221 for Mana. Ryan hit 316. Antrim hit 412. Down hit 120. What's the views like? Is the competition maybe becoming a bit more like just sort of a lot of players are thinking,
Well, from what I can see, like I can speak from, let's say, Carlo's point of view, and kind of chatting to the lads down there. It's a couple of extra games. Like, it'd be great to have a bit of a run in it. Like, I don't know about long-term development. Let's say I think it's nice for players to have a couple. Definitely, for a couple of summer games is great. Like I know Carlo had a little bit of a run at last year. It didn't do anything for the long-term development. I mean, it probably papered over a few cracks in the league, and kind of everyone came back next year and kind of started all over again. So as regards to developing teams and teams getting better, not particularly, and with such a high turnover of players that we'd have as well, I don't think the mood for it there wasn't a savage appetite. Now and again, this could be different in different counties. I mean, you go to London, you're probably looking at a completely different attitude, but I don't know. There's a middle tier of teams here that probably aren't good enough to be looking into Sam Maguire territory or winning this, and they're too good to be kind of in the real bottom end of it. Like, look at Offaly, for example. Are they saying to themselves, look, we're probably not up to the level of getting up to the top end of Sam yet. We'll use this as a development tournament, give some younger players game time, and we'll go about the league again next year. Like, if this is a development tournament like another O'Byrne Cup, Jesus, then we're in trouble. Like, so look, this happened at the Tommy Murphy before. It's the exact same thing. A couple of good years, and eventually the shine started to come off it. So look, that's the way I thought it was going to go originally, and I still think it's the way it's going to go ultimately. But look, if a team got not got direct together, but if they got the right mindset, got themselves in a really good place, really went after it, I think, yeah, it could be something good. But you're looking at all these scorelines, and it just shows how different teams are approaching it, which is very much so ad hoc, you know.
Ryan, I was playing golf on Saturday morning actually with a couple of guys, and one of them, the GA lad, like, and one of them is an avid GA fan, like, and he said to me, "Fuck, does the Tailteann Cup start today?" And he actually said to me, like, there's no real hype about it, no real talk about it. Like, there was a paltry crowd in Newry on Saturday for the visit to Limerick. I know two teachers actually in school chatting today that left at half time. You know, it was that poor, like, and nothing to do with Down, of course, because Down are probably, I would say, will probably go on and win it. But it just sort of, it just makes you feel like, you know, it's not great. Like, whereas I was sort of thinking, and we've talked about this, so we could fucking rant the old drum, like, why we don't have that something different where it's a knockout championship, 32 teams in a hat, you know, everyone plays for fucking Sam, home and away. You know, imagine Dublin versus Kerry in the first round. Mother of God, be a sellout in fucking Croke Park, you know, or in a neutral venue in fucking Park Equive or whatever. You know, you had to get a fucking sellout. You know, Tyrone away to Kerry, Donegal away to Down, you know, all of a sudden, and you might get, as you said, a result like London, you might get a big shock, and everyone has their day out. Everyone, it's a cup. That's what you're playing for, a cup, and a cup is a knockout competition. We have turned this into like this Tailteann, right? I can't get my fucking head around this, lads. There's 3 teams qualifying from this group, like 3 teams. Like, what is the actual point in it? Like, except more games. And like, even at the weekend, lads, I had to go back in today and say, was that on? I didn't even know Fermanagh were playing, right? And that's the truth. And that's no disrespect to Fermanagh or Wicklow. I didn't even know they were playing. The only reason I knew Down were playing is because on my socials it comes up that Down are fucking playing, and you get a bit of an update or whatever from the Down Twitter piece. But like, it just doesn't. It's not whetting my appetite. Like,
Yeah,
You're not
probably.
blocked off your own Twitter page, Stephen, no?
no, not yet.
All right.
Look, probably, lads, the timing of these games, like they're on Saturdays, maybe at 1 o'clock
Yeah.
and 2 o'clock. And I know, look, the Ulster final was on the Sunday. That's the headline. The Leinster final was on Sunday. But again, a lot of people are probably going, 3 o'clock on a Saturday. You know, I've got other things to do, you know. So I would say that. Now, if we are talking about even having a tier 3, like, Jesus, what kind of excitement would people have? Let's face it, watching tier 3 football. You know,
Yeah.
Waterford, Tipperary. I don't know what teams. London, you would think would have been tier 3, and then they go and beat bloody Offaly at the weekend.
Yeah.
I would have, although I would have thought like the likes of Fermanagh, the Down, the Slegos, maybe, even Offaly. I would have thought them teams would have been saying, "Hold on a wee second here, lads. We have a real good chance of doing something in this. Look at the joy that it brought to Westmeath. They won it 2 years ago. So I would be disappointed from an Offaly point of view that they let London come and beat them in their own backyard. Like that, that's a disaster. It's great for London, of course it is. And that's the flip side of it, Stephen, is if some of these so-called lesser teams get a win, then that could be the highlight of their year, because they probably training all year. They probably know they're not going to get promoted, and all they're waiting for is just one big win in a championship. So it's hard to know what to do, but at the moment I agree that it's there's not much excitement around.
Yeah, well, I suppose the game of the weekend in the Tailteann, obviously, well, not the game of the weekend, but the result of the weekend, Ledge, was London's first championship win in 11 years. Kieran Dibber scored 1-5 in that game. London, speaking of Kieran Deely, Kieran is behind the DSS company, but like, speaking to Kieran, who was with London and done a bloody good job with them and had them really well organised, the logistics, Ledge, of London, people on the outside that don't know this probably have no idea how difficult it is for London to train. Like, some lads might have to get 2 tube trains across the city, 90 minutes to get to training, and you're on a tube after work at 5 o'clock, rush hour time. You know, I remember speaking to Conor Dorn from Longstone, who told me a great story one night. We were playing them, Ledge, in Ruislip, and me and Dorney were having a few pints after. Conor kicked 7 points in the Connacht Championship against Galway, a fine footballer. He's back now playing, and it's great to see, because he's had a couple of cruciate injuries, God love him. But I taught Conor years ago, great fella, like, and it's Mark's brother, actually, Dorney, who would have on the show. And the only difference between him and Dorney was he could score, Dorney couldn't. But the laugh was, he says, Stevie, like, you have no idea what it's like here. He says, like, we're training on a Thursday night, Ryan, he says, and I'm getting on a tube and I'm getting off and I'm walking past Piccadilly Gardens and the fucking place is buzzing. and boys are out having pints, the sun's shining, and he says there's many's a night we've just decided to go in for pints and not go to training. And that's true. You sort of can't blame those lads, and living in London, living in the life, working hard all week, and there is a big social culture in those big cities, London, Manchester, freaking Glasgow, whatever, New York. It is that big sort of drinking culture. Go to the pub after work, and a friend of mine he's now a runner. Actually, he's running really, really competitively. Like, he used to say to me, a fella who used to live in Newry now, he's been in England now a long time, and he used to say, Stevie, like, you have no idea. He lived in Manchester for 5 or 6 years. He says it's hard to come home and get out and train when you're in a city. He says you get into that rut of, whining and dining and drinking. So even the logistics of it, from a social aspect, from a travel aspect, like, it's so difficult for them, Ledge, and people probably in Ireland don't appreciate it, but we get a taste of it, Ledge, when we went over those couple of times. It's a tough place to go to, Ruislip, like. It's a tough place to go to.
I always used to enjoy going over because you kind of felt
Hold on. Sorry for interrupting you. So, Ryan, I'll tell you a quick story. So he said he used to enjoy going over. So there was one year the game was on a Saturday, right? Okay. The flight home was on the Sunday, and Ledger didn't come home till the Tuesday. So work that out, like, Sorry, Ledge, go on there.
Poetic license there, Stephen. But you drove me home on the boat, I think. No, but the trip over used to always kind of ground you a little bit, because you kind of see how important the GA club is to people in that area, to expats in that area. You can feel that it's probably something more than just competing in Division 4. It's probably something a little bit more, I don't want to say patriotic, but like it does provide something for people who are living away from home. It gives them a little flavour of that local community element that probably is that gets lost in London, I'd say, as well. Like, I had a brother that worked over there for a while, and you can kind of become swamped by the city, it's so big, you can kind of be lost in a little bit. So having your base there in Ruislip is I think provides something much bigger than just competing in Division 4 or competing in a Tailteann Cup. I think it provides like a sort of a little mini community for those people. And look, talking about logistics, it's probably why a lot of players you see, they might only do 2-3 years max, because it's just so hard to keep up that kind of the commute and kind of that sort of intensity of your week, and especially with the intensity of intercounty, like it's insane. And you throw travelling in on top of that when they're coming back and forth for league games, like, so it's very hard. Like, and in fairness to Kieran, I know we won't big him up too much here, but I think he brought London from, let's say, a slightly more amateur era to a really professional setup. And that year we played them over there, I think it was 2018 when we went up. Like, they were one of the best coach sides we played over there that year. Sure. And they had the new stadium going, the McGovern Park going, pitch was lovely. It was like, I think it plays a much bigger role than just your Division 4 team. I think it plays a bigger role in the community,
I didn't like flying, Ryan, so I actually drove the kit fan over twice. That's a true story. I drove the kit fan over with Benji O'Brien, and I fucking remember Ruislip, the crack was great one summer's evening, Ledge, and there was pints flowing by, and I was thinking, who's driving this kid fan home? And I was I'll tell you, because it's not me. And I'll tell you, but it was it was a great atmosphere, Ryan, just what Ledge said there. Like, it is a wonderful atmosphere. Down's over this weekend. I'm led to believe that their missus and their girlfriends and things like that have been invited. I think EOS or splashing out in a private jet or something like that. But that's a wee bit tongue in cheek. But they're all going over. I think they're going to make a bit of a weekend of it. And I suppose there's no harm in doing it, because there's 2 weeks then to the following game. And we've talked about the social side of things. It's probably a great opportunity for a team to do that, from a bonding perspective. But Ryan, to go what Daniel said, like, I get a feel for it when we're over there. I don't know, Daniel, remember the Windmill Bar in Acton, where we all went back and there was a barbecue put on for us, and they were just delighted to see, a GA team from Ireland, a county team from Ireland, the connection, relatives, people, as Ledge said, that are over there and have been, and there's a Carlow supporters club in London, Ledge, Carlow supporters club, and every county, has got some connection there, Ryan, in some way. I remember Killian Butler played for them, actually. And Killian was actually born and reared a Cockney, like a proper Cockney lad, and proper born and reared, played all his club football in London. It means something to him. Like, I think he's in New York. He's playing for New York.
New York. Yeah.
Killian's playing for New York now, which is mad. But so like, for a lad like that, Ryan, it's hugely important for him.
Yeah, that's it. And like, lads, London, am I right in saying they made a Connacht final? Probably, I'm not too sure, years ago. Yeah. Like, there definitely has been massive strides. The facilities over there, we've played them as well. The facilities, as Dan mentioned, the stand, there's definitely a real carnival atmosphere anytime you go over. So the fact that they got that win over Offaly, like, there's going to be massive belief now that London can get out of the group. And probably the unfortunate thing is that they're facing Down at home. Probably if they were able to get Limerick over there, they'd be saying, well, we can definitely win this game. And then,
I still think, Ryan, that beat Limerick in the neutral venue, wherever the neutral venue is. I think they must have Limerick. They must be playing Limerick then, maybe, or maybe
Birmingham.
Where are they playing them?
Birmingham.
No, but it'll probably be in around. Well, actually, they played their neutral game last year in Parnell Park, so it'll be Parnell Park because of travelling. They'll fly into the Dublin, and it'll be Parnell Park. So like, they could beat Limerick. Like, they could.
Yeah, and that's the other side of the Tailteann Cup, lads. That for the underdog that takes it serious and really goes after it, I think it's a very good competition for them. Now there's a couple of teams at the top. Down are no doubt favourites for it. Fermanagh are going to be pushing Kildare potentially if they get their house in order. But then there's a middle group of teams where you're just not too sure where they're at. Our boys think maybe heading stateside, etc. And it does feel like they just want the season over. And that's the only issue, I suppose, that we have with this competition.
That's
before you head to, it's a good point though, Ryan, about like, maybe like, and again, if we remove ourselves as supporters, as analysts, and look at it from a player's point of view, if you're a Division 4-3 player that's had 2 wins all year, you don't necessarily want to think about anything long term. You just want that feeling of winning the game, So maybe this isn't about fans or this isn't about anyone else, but it's about, because we were talking about the GPA the other day when you were trying to get more games in summer, and that was for players. So maybe this tournament is for players. As I said, you mightn't be getting thousands at it, but I'd love to see what players think of it. Honestly, I know the GPA does lots of surveys and stuff like that. Well, I'd love to see what players thought. But just last point, and I know it's probably non-coaching, but that same trip in 2018, Ryan, I was living in Sagart at the time with my now wife, and the boys were driving up. Benji and Steve were driving the van. So they came up on the Thursday night after training, I think, and we said, look, we'd put them up for the night. There's no problem. But little did I know that Benji was a notorious sleepwalker. And all the doors in my house in Sagard looked the same. So about 12 o'clock at night, I heard just rattling going around. And who tries to jump into bed? Only Benji sitting in beside us.
True story.
They're pulling him out of the bed. Oh, Jesus.
True story.
He
came to me and he says, Jesus, yes, I think I walked in the Legends room there. And I said, you'd be grand. Did you see anything? Did you see anything? He says, no. But hey, but lads, before we go as well, just to back up that Ledge, and it is true, like, Kildare kicked 325 at the weekend. They'll probably kick another big score this weekend against Waterford. Probably a tough year for them, and they'll need that, and it obviously will maybe it could reignite them as well, but who knows. But listen, we're back talking about Kildare again. Mad, isn't it? But here, listen, we'll lads, we'll get chatting next week, and I know we kick off the All-Ireland series this weekend, so it'll be some interesting games. But listen, lads, thanks very much. Appreciate your insight.
Thanks, lads. See you later.